So my name is Karen Kirkby. I'm the Richard Rose Chair of Proton Therapy Physics, which is a joint post between the University of Manchester and the Christie NHS Foundation Trust. I moved to Manchester in 2015 and set up the Proton Research Group. We started with about 3 people, and this has now grown to over 40. And we work very closely with the clinical teams at the Christie, looking at what current research infrastructures were available across Europe. There was one in lower energy ion beams, there is one with neutrons, there's one with synchrotrons, etc., etc. But there was nothing that allowed the research rooms in proton therapy centres to actually work together. And there seemed to be an opportunity to develop a research infrastructure for you, particularly for European researchers, which was based in these proton therapy centres and brought in the clinical expertise that was surrounding them. We also were very fortunate to get both of the major equipment suppliers, IBA and Varian, involved. And that was that was how Inspire came about. It has been difficult for everyone during the pandemic because we haven't had some of the natural places we would have networked with Inspire would have been when we all met at conferences. And, although we have all met, although many of us have gone to the conferences virtually, the being able to meet and talk and have those conversations about Inspire has been more difficult. But one of the things I think the networking has also enabled is us to do some intercomparison experiments. So we have the one led by Olga Solkol at GSI, which is the radiobiology intercomparison, which is ongoing at the moment. I think we've got the project on dosimetry that's being led by Marie Davakova. And we have the LET intercomparison study that's been led by Armin Luhr from Dresden. So we have a number of these things, and I think these have developed through networking discussions. In our networking in Inspire, we have what we call an innovation gateway, which is about taking research from the more basic levels through to the commercial end of things. And one of the big successes of Inspire, and I'm sure you've heard this from the MSIG, which is the ionization chamber that fits on the end of the nozzle that has been developed. And that is now available as commercially as a research project. They've developed a clinical prototype, which is being tested at another Inspire partner, Aarhus. There are a number of other things that have come through that innovation pipeline. For example, the NTCP, normal tissue complication probability database that's been developed between Groningen and IBA. So there's a really nice piece of work there. And, that will be used across Europe. And, that is another example of great networking and working together. I think one of the things we would want to do in Inspire too is to look to develop more of the clinical aspects of the project and to develop our transnational access capabilities so that we still offered beam time, but we also offered access to cell models in 2D and 3D, because that is it. So access to spheroids, organoids, tumoroids, which it would be useful for researchers working in that field. But also we look at access to some of the clinical competencies so that often people developing proton therapy are less aware of how proton therapy and photon therapy is different, treatment planning, and other of the clinical competencies as to how to actually deliver proton therapy and some of the clinical issues that are around that. One of the strengths of Inspire has been the fact that we've provided an infrastructure for researchers across Europe to access state-of-the-art proton therapy, and with colleagues at GSI and KBI CART, heavier ions. Also very excited to develop a roadmap for proton therapy, which is part of the Foresight study in Inspire. And that will and by doing that, we involve all partners in Inspire, and we will, I think, bring some from outside so that we look at what the key things for proton therapy are likely to be in the next 30 years and look to develop that into Inspire too.